As you're watching this video right now, Lopez was taken into custody yesterday in his uniform.
A local Customs and Border Protection officer is accused of smuggling migrants across the border. Bettis is accused of allowing an undocumented migrant to drive vehicles across the Paso del Norte Bridge several times as part of a smuggling ring.
Amid the growing chaos in the United States, with transnational crime on the rise, the migrant crisis spiraling out of control, and drug smuggling becoming deadlier by the day, a terrifying truth has surfaced. The very people sworn to protect law and order have become the ones betraying it. From small-town cops in Florida to border patrol agents in California and Texas, many have been caught up in a web of corruption, joining forces with Mexican drug cartels for personal profit. One of the most shocking scandals of all was the case of Sheriff Marcos Lopez, the former head of the Ocala County Sheriff's Office in Florida. Once praised as a model of loyalty and dedication, Lopez was secretly running a criminal empire from behind his badge. It all began back in 2019, when Lopez was still a deputy sheriff with political ambitions. He needed money to fund his election campaign. And that's when the door to the underworld opened. A man named Krishna, who managed an illegal gambling network in Lake County, and Kate, a Chinese businesswoman importing electronic slot machines, became his perfect partners. In a secret deal, Lopez promised to use his influence in the police force to protect their operations, in exchange for a huge cut of the profits. Not long after, the Eclipse Social Club opened its doors in Ocala. On the surface, it was just another entertainment lounge, but behind those closed doors were rows of slot machines, electronic roulette tables, and a full underground betting system that ran 24 hours a day. Lopez not only shielded the club from police raids, but also quietly instructed his subordinates to look the other way whenever suspicious reports came in. Every time a rival gambling den was busted, Lopez saw it as his own victory. What he didn't know was that the FBI had been watching him for months. Federal agents collected evidence quietly, text messages, emails, and recordings. Some leaked messages revealed Lopez and Krishna discussing profit splits, bribes, and even how to deal with anyone who dared to expose them. Lopez went so far as to give Krishna an honorary police badge, a serious crime that allowed his partner in crime to move freely without suspicion. But things turned against Lopez when Krishna decided to save himself. Facing prosecution, he flipped, cooperating with the FBI, surrendering nearly $1 million in assets, and providing detailed accounts of their entire operation. That betrayal cost Lopez his freedom. On the day of his arrest, the once respected sheriff of Ocala, a symbol of discipline and justice, was handcuffed right in his own office. The story took an even darker turn when Lopez's ex-wife, Robin Severance Lopez, got dragged into the mess. Her cleaning company was accused of being a front for money laundering. Bank reports showed that cash from the Eclipse Social Club was funneled through multiple accounts before being cleaned and reported as legitimate business income. Although Robin denied knowing anything, private messages and photos suggested she was fully aware of where the money came from. The Lopez case exposed more than just one man's downfall. It revealed a systemic pattern of corruption where power and greed collide, creating criminal alliances between law enforcement and organized crime. And worse, Florida was just the beginning. Hundreds of miles west, along the US-Mexico border, similar stories kept surfacing. Mexican cartels, especially the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation cartel, didn't just smuggle drugs. They bought the loyalty of America's own gatekeepers. Take the case of Manuel Perez Jr., a Customs and Border Protection officer in El Paso, Texas. Perez was accused of allowing vehicles loaded with undocumented migrants and drugs to pass through checkpoints unchecked, all in exchange for tens of thousands of dollars in cash every month. Prosecutors said Perez was part of a nationwide trafficking ring, moving heroin and methamphetamine all the way to Chicago and Atlanta. If convicted, he could face up to 40 years in federal prison. In California, two other CBP officers, Jesse Clark Garcia and Diego Bono, came up with a creative way to communicate. They use secret emoji codes in their text messages to signal safe lanes for cartel vehicles. One truck carrying more than 1,100 pounds of drugs, mostly fentanyl and methamphetamine, slipped through undetected. The bribe money paid for luxury trips to Las Vegas, flashy sports cars, and even investments in horse racing. Meanwhile, in San Diego, two more agents, Fales Alonte and Ricardo Rodriguez, were accused of taking bribes to let undocumented migrants cross the border. When police raided Alonte's home, they found $70,000 in cash. His girlfriend was caught separately in Tijuana, trying to smuggle drugs back into Mexico. And then there was Leonard Darnell George, a former border inspector, sentenced to 23 years in prison after taking $400,000 in bribes to wave through vehicles carrying people and narcotics. Prosecutors called it a powerful reminder that no one stands above the law. Yet despite these harsh sentences, the wave of corruption hasn't stopped. In June 2025, a massive crackdown called Operation Valley Takedown, led by the Department of Justice and the FBI, uncovered even more shocking cases. One of them involved Alexander Bennett Gindley, a Border Patrol agent accused of smuggling methamphetamine while still wearing his uniform on duty. Investigators called it a direct threat to America's national security, because when the guardian of the border becomes the one holding the gate open, the line between justice and crime simply disappears. From Florida to California, from sheriff's offices to border checkpoints, a dark picture of corruption within America's law enforcement system is coming into focus. And the big question people are asking is, what makes those who swore to uphold the law turn against it? The downfall of Sheriff Marcos Lopez and the string of Border Patrol officers caught in corruption scandals are just the tip of a massive iceberg. When experts start connecting these cases, a shocking pattern begins to appear. A structured, repeating cycle of corruption built on power, greed, and lack of oversight. Together, they've created an ecosystem where criminals and law enforcers coexist in a parasitic relationship. The common thread running through most of these cases is the abuse of public authority to protect illegal operations. At the local level, like in Lopez's case, power was used to shield underground casinos, launder money, and crush competitors. At the federal level, border agents used their positions to open the gates for cartels. They took advantage of the loose inspection system that handles thousands of vehicles every single day, turning what's supposed to be a national security process into a pay-to-pass business. Even more alarming, these aren't isolated incidents. They form a repeating systemic pattern. Each new case seems to follow the same script. A financially struggling officer gets approached by a cartel through an intermediary and slowly slips into the criminal world. It often starts small, just a few $1,000s to skip one inspection, but within months they're completely trapped in the network. According to federal investigators, Mexican cartels use highly sophisticated tactics to recruit insiders. They don't just offer money, they prey on personal weaknesses, debt, broken marriages, or career frustrations. And once an officer takes the bait, the cartel immediately creates leverage, recording conversations, filming meetings, or saving bank transactions. From that point on, the compromised official becomes the perfect puppet, committing crimes while being controlled by fear of exposure. An internal report from the Department of Homeland Security once admitted that the massive expansion of the Customs and Border Protection Force under President George W. Bush was, quote, a double-edged sword. In their rush to double the number of border agents to deal with migration surges, the government lowered hiring standards. Many recruits were cleared after just a few weeks of background checks, when the process normally took several months. The result? The number of CBP officers arrested for corruption tripled in just 10 years. A former CBP supervisor, who spoke anonymously to NBC, put it bluntly. We had people who were never properly trained in ethics, working in one of the most tempting environments imaginable, where closing your eyes for 10 seconds could earn you a year's salary. But this isn't just a matter of personal morality. Weak oversight and a lack of transparency in the organizational system itself have helped sustain this vicious cycle. In many states, internal investigations still rely on self-reporting or in-house reviews, both easily manipulated. External agencies like the FBI can only step in when clear evidence emerges, and by then, it's usually too late. Criminologists describe this phenomenon as structural corruption, meaning the rot isn't just in the people, but in the system's design itself. When an institution allows power to concentrate without accountability or balance, corruption becomes an inevitable outcome, not an exception. In Florida, figures like Lopez couldn't have survived without a hidden support network of colleagues, business owners, and even local politicians. Many of the companies that financed his campaign were later suspected of benefiting indirectly from his illegal gambling operations. And along the Mexican border, the situation is even worse. Corruption chains that stretch across generations of officers, where newcomers are trained on who can be bribed and who to avoid. One former CBP officer who was later prosecuted admitted, "You don't even need the cartel to find you. Some officers make the first move themselves." When the base salary is around $45,000 a year, but one loaded truck can bring in $10,000 in cash, the line between right and wrong starts to blur real fast. But the price of this downfall goes far beyond individual prison sentences. It's tearing at the fabric of society itself. Every time an officer takes a bribe, it's not just drugs or undocumented migrants crossing into America. It's the erosion of public trust. Each new scandal is another crack in the foundation of faith that citizens once had in the people sworn to protect them. The most obvious consequence has been the explosion of America's drug crisis. Just fentanyl alone, the powerful synthetic opioid, kills more than 70,000 Americans every year. Most of that fentanyl comes through the southern border crossings, and every time an officer looks the other way, it could mean hundreds of deadly doses slipping into the country. Another consequence is the collapse of public trust in both the Customs and Border Protection Agency and local police departments. Even though CBP leadership keeps insisting that wrongdoing only represents a small minority, the public isn't convinced. When a resident in El Paso or San Diego is asked to show identification at a checkpoint, they're not just seeing a government officer. They're seeing the image of a system that's been bought off by drug traffickers. According to a Pew Research survey from the year 2024, only 41% of Americans said they completely trust the integrity of the border force, a sharp drop from 62% back in 2010. Analysts warn that when public trust falls, the effectiveness of national security policies falls with it. Corruption also takes a heavy toll on honest officers, the ones still fighting to uphold the honor of their profession. They're forced to work in an environment where the entire force's reputation has been stained, where they face suspicion from the public and even from colleagues. One former CBP officer shared her frustration saying, "Every time I pull someone over, the driver jokes about how much money I want to let them go. It's humiliating. A few bad cops have dragged the rest of us through the mud." Corruption weakens America's ability to fight the cartels, which are becoming smarter and richer than ever. Once a single officer is compromised, entire operations, patrol routes, arrest plans, and intelligence data can be exposed. That's why so many missions fail before they even start. As one DEA investigator admitted, cartels don't need spies, they just need one desperate officer. From a socio-economic perspective, cases like those of Lopez or Perez aren't just criminal matters. They're symptoms of deeper inequality and lack of opportunity within America's civil service system. When officers can barely make ends meet, facing political pressure and constant risk, they become easy targets for organized crime. Many experts are calling for a complete overhaul of how law enforcement recruits, trains, and monitors its personnel, especially along the border. Some states have already started experimenting with new measures. Regular financial audits to detect unusual wealth or suspicious transactions, rotating officers every 2 to 3 years to prevent cozy relationships with local groups, using artificial intelligence and behavioral data to flag potential corruption patterns inside the agency. But so far, these reforms are still in their testing phase. Meanwhile, cartel money keeps flowing, and temptation never disappears. As the wave of scandals continues to spread, the official response from US authorities has been a mix of confidence and quiet anxiety. In a public statement, a spokesperson for the Customs and Border Protection Agency said, "The misconduct of a few individuals does not reflect the values of the tens of thousands of dedicated men and women working tirelessly to defend our borders." But that reassurance hasn't calmed public outrage, especially when, month after month, new allegations of bribery, money laundering, and smuggling keep emerging. Federal prosecutors, on the other hand, have responded with tough symbolic punishments. In the case of Leonard Darnell George, once considered a model of discipline within the border force, the 23-year prison sentence was seen as a warning shot to the entire system. The presiding judge declared, "When a border officer betrays his duty, he doesn't just sell his loyalty, he opens the door for evil to walk into this nation." Similarly, in the cases across California and Texas, federal courts have issued massive financial penalties and seized everything tied to bribery, from luxury cars and real estate to bank accounts. Many of those convicted have been permanently banned from ever serving in public office again. Even when justice is served, many observers argue that the system is still treating the symptoms, not the disease. The deep-rooted protect one another culture inside law enforcement remains a major obstacle. In many cases, honest officers who report misconduct by their colleagues end up being isolated, punished, or forced out of the job altogether. A former FBI special agent who took part in border-related investigations admitted, "We're not just fighting the cartels, we're fighting the wall of silence inside the system. Every time an officer reports a fellow agent, their career is basically over." That's why US lawmakers are calling for a nationwide reform that would include creating an independent oversight body to investigate internal crimes within security agencies, mandating public disclosure of disciplinary and corruption records for federal employees, and establishing a dedicated whistleblower protection program for CBP and local police officers. Some states, like California and Arizona, have already started implementing what they call integrity task forces, special investigation teams that include citizens and independent journalists to ensure transparency. Though controversial, these initiatives show an acknowledgement that corruption in law enforcement can't be solved with individual prison sentences alone. What angers the public most, however, is the gap between federal agencies' words and their actions. While institutions like CBP and the Department of Homeland Security keep declaring that integrity is our top priority, budgets for internal oversight and ethics training have been slashed in recent years. A report from the Government Accountability Office revealed that only 0.4% of CBP's entire budget goes toward internal anti-corruption efforts, an alarmingly small figure for an agency with nearly 65,000 employees. That imbalance has led analysts to ask, does the government really want to fix the root of the problem, or just manage its image to avoid political fallout? Meanwhile, the American media has played a crucial role in exposing the darkness within the system. Outlets like the New York Times, ProPublica, and the Los Angeles Times have published a series of investigative reports detailing how cartel money has infiltrated law enforcement. Many articles describe border agents attending lavish parties with cartel members, or local sheriffs receiving campaign donations from businesses that appear legitimate, but are actually fronts for criminal organizations. One ProPublica investigation even revealed that many large-scale smuggling operations could not have happened without inside help. Cartels used confidential information from CBP employees to bypass checkpoints or received advance warnings about DEA raids. That has left the public wondering how many anti-drug operations have failed because the enemy was already inside the ranks. The social consequences go beyond just a loss of trust. They've created a deeper confusion about the very meaning of justice itself. When those who represent the law break it, the line between protector and criminal becomes dangerously blurred. Sociologists call this a public trust crisis, a phenomenon whose effects can last for decades, weakening the entire structure of legitimate authority. In communities along the border, skepticism runs deep. People no longer know whom to trust. A resident of San Ysidro, California, told CNN, "We used to think the bad guys were the cartels and the cops were the protectors. Now they're the same. The only difference is one wears a uniform." In this atmosphere, some civil organizations and former honest officials have begun calling for a redefinition of loyalty, not loyalty to superiors or institutions, but to the law and the people. They argue that only when officers place the interests of the nation and its citizens above personal gain can America begin to restore the trust it has lost. The Operation Valley Takedown case, announced in June 2025, marked a decisive turning point in this fight. Dozens of border officials were indicted, including Alexander Bennett Gindley, who used his own patrol vehicle to transport methamphetamine. The Department of Justice called the operation a statement that no one stands above the law, not even those who enforce it. Images of uniformed agents in handcuffs taken right inside Border Patrol headquarters spread across national television. A symbolic message that America was willing to cleanse itself, no matter how painful the process might be. But one haunting question still echoes. If the people tasked with protecting the borders, maintaining order, and upholding justice can be bought, then who is really protecting America? This isn't just a question of personal ethics. It's a warning about the fragility of democracy itself. A nation cannot remain strong if the institutions meant to defend it are corroded from within. The officers and agents who betrayed their badges may be behind bars now, but the damage they left behind, the doubt, the fear, the erosion of trust, will take years, maybe an entire generation, to repair. So, the end of this story is not simply the sentencing of Marcos Lopez or Leonard George, it's a reminder of the price of indifference. When greed and power are left unchecked, when oversight becomes an afterthought, the border between justice and crime fades into a thin, uncertain line. And if America fails to protect itself from the corruption of those it empowers to guard its gates, the day may come when no one left is clean enough to stand watch over them.